As you've probably noticed, AI has been the hot topic these last few months, especially around the world of image generation, but you've probably also heard of ChatGPT, which is essentially a conversation bot that you can ask questions to and it can provide you answers. But did you know that you can use it as a bookworm to get great suggestions on what to read next? So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to start with something really simple here. Give me 10 book recommendations for fans of 100 Years of Solitude. Really, really famous and popular book, so it should have some good recommendations for us. So that took less than 60 seconds to produce, which is crazy. And the first recommendation, The House of Spirits by Isabel Allende. Never heard of that title or that author. And what I really like about ChatGPT is it's not just giving me a list of 10 book titles, it's also explaining why those might be good recommendations for someone who is a fan of 100 Years of Solitude. So this book is often compared to 100 Years of Solitude for its magical realism, multi-generational family saga, and exploration of Latin American culture. So if you really liked the themes and style of 100 Years of Solitude, that's obviously right on the mark. Second recommendation, 100 Years of Vicissitude by Andres Bergen, a modern tribute to 100 Years of Solitude. This book follows the life of a Japanese woman over 100 years as she lives through war, love, and loss. That sounds really appealing to me because one of my favorite books is A Far Better Rest by Susan Allen, which is a retelling of the Charles Dickens novel A Tale of Two Cities. Before reading that book, I wouldn't have thought that I would like a remake kind of, but I thought she did a great job and it was almost better in some ways than A Tale of Two Cities. So this is actually very interesting to me. I'm probably going to put this on my list. Number 3 is Love in the Time of Cholera. That's kind of a weak result just because if you liked 100 Years of Solitude, obviously the next step is to just look at other works by the same author, but I'll give ChatGPT a pass on this one. The Invention of Morel by Adolfo Bioy Caceres. This short novel features a mysterious island and love story that defies time and space, much like 100 Years of Solitude. The War of Don Emanuel's Nether Parts by Luis de Berniers. This humorous novel takes place in a fictional Latin American country and follows the lives of its eccentric inhabitants during a revolution. That sounds hilarious. The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. This novel tells the story of a Dominican-American boy growing up in New Jersey and explores themes of identity, family, and cultural heritage. Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel, the magical realist novel follows the life of a young Mexican woman and her family as she navigates love, tradition, and food. The Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño. This novel explores the lives of a group of young poets in Mexico. The fact that this came up with this list in less than 60 seconds and it was completely free to do, that's very impressive. And when you compare this to simply asking for recommendations on, let's say like Reddit, for example, a lot of people are going to read a book and then see your post and say, oh yeah, you might like this. And you're kind of basing off of one person's opinion, where ChatGPT is essentially doing a meta-analysis on all of this information that's been put into the system. So it's aggregated off of lots of opinions, not just one singular person's opinion or experience. So we saw how it did with recommendations on a specific book title, but let's do it for a specific author now. And I expect similar results, but I still want to check it out. We'll do one a little bit more offbeat. Give me 10 book recommendations for fans of Thomas Pynchon. What's disappointing about this is it recommends 5 Thomas Pynchon novels. Obviously, if I'm a fan of Thomas Pynchon, I'm going to have already read some of his works. So this is a little bit of a fail. Let's see if we can get ChatGPT to exclude Thomas Pynchon's novels. Give me 10 book recommendations for fans of Thomas Pynchon. Exclude any works by Thomas Pynchon himself. Okay, so this is fairly interesting. Gave us some similar recommendations compared to the first time. Infinite Jest is on here again. But then it actually recommended 2 Thomas Pynchon works, The Crying of Lot 49 and Gravity's Rainbow. And, 3, and Mason Dixon. But then it just attributed those works to other authors. So I think it took my suggestion to exclude Thomas Pynchon too literally and simply just excluded it from the words it was using. So let's try to rework this just one more time. All right, so we finally got the result we're looking for. It gave me 10 novels to check out, and it didn't recommend me any Thomas Pynchon works, which is what I wanted. I will say a lot of the books on this list are fairly obvious for fans of Pynchon. There's not a whole lot of other similar literature that's going to appeal to you, but Infinite Jest by Foster Wallace, White Noise by Don DeLillo, J.R. by William Gaddis, Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, Pale Fire by Nabokov, House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, 2666 by Roberto Bolano. That's probably the only book on this list I don't recognize. The Recognitions by Gaddis, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, and Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco. I would say in general, asking for recommendations based on a specific title rather than an author is probably going to produce better results for you. Okay, now let's really test ChatGPT and see if it can give us recommendations if we don't like a specific author. Give me 10 book recommendations for people who dislike Charles Dickens. So that took ChatGPT probably the longest out of any of the queries I've put in so far, but it actually did a better job than I anticipated because there's no direct antithesis to Charles Dickens. I guess, technically speaking, very sparse writing to combat Dickens's overly verbose writing. However, that doesn't really narrow it down, but ChatGPT did a pretty good job. And it even said, if you dislike Charles Dickens and are looking for books that differ from his style, considering the following recommendations, these novels span various genres and styles, offering a variety of themes and storytelling techniques that contrast Dickens's work. So it knows like, hey, it's kind of hard to narrow that down. So it did give us a fairly broad selection here, which is great. First up is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And what I love is that it tells you why it picked this work. This is a dystopian novel that explores the impact of technology and consumerism, presenting a vision of the future that contrasts Dickens' focus on the past. That's really cool. Slaughterhouse-Five. This offers a stark contrast to Dickens' realist style, which is true because there's a lot of kind of like metafiction and dream world stuff in Slaughterhouse-Five. The Stranger by Camus. This has pared down prose that contrasts Dickens's elaborate descriptions, very true. To Kill a Mockingbird, it has a narrative that is both tender and incisive, differing from Dickens's often sardonic tone. Catcher in the Rye captures the perspective of an alienated and disillusioned teenager, in contrast to Dickens's focus on a wide cast of characters. 100 Years of Solitude, it blends fantasy and metaphor that differs from Dickens's realist style. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. It uses sparse prose, which contrasts Dickens's elaborate storytelling and large ensemble of characters. I totally agree with that. Never Let Me Go by Ishiguro. I actually have not read that book, although I own it. It has a subtle and emotionally resonant narrative that differs from Dickens's more expansive approach. Beloved by Toni Morrison. I also have shamefully not read this. And lastly, A Handmaid's Tale, which offers a feminist perspective and a stark vision of the future that contrasts Dickens's focus on the social issues of his time. So all in all, I think this actually did really well. So if you are going to use ChatGPT to get yourself some book recommendations, I would probably start with asking things based on a specific title that you like or on a specific author that you dislike, because it seemed to do really well with both of those. It really struggled with giving me recommendations for an author that I liked, and it just wanted to spit out books that the author's written, which is kind of like, hey, duh, ChatGPT. Apparently you're not that smart yet. Where do you usually like to get your book recommendations from? Is it Reddit? Is it Instagram? Is it Goodreads? Let me know in the comments. But in the meantime, give this a try and let me know how it works out for you. And if you want to watch my video on whether or not ChatGPT can replace your favorite author, watch this video right here.